Hey there viewers, breaking news out of South Africa has left the world stunned. Authorities just raided Oprah's private school, and what they discovered inside shocked even the most seasoned investigators. 17 girls were found, and the questions surrounding how and why are only getting darker. Let's get into it. Chapter 1. The inventory was short. I've worked with NGOs and supply teams for the better part of 9 years. My job isn't glamorous. I track crates, update spreadsheets, file shipping manifests, and verify inventory for field deployments. I'm the one they call when someone forgets to label how many cans of nutritional powder went where, or when a donor wants proof that 50 mattresses really got to a camp in Mpumalanga and didn't get lost in transit. So when I was asked to accompany a surprise audit at the Oprah Winfrey Leadership Academy for Girls, I figured it would be the same routine. Numbers, checks, maybe some light tension if we caught the staff off guard. I didn't expect anything strange, definitely nothing wrong. The school sits out in Henley-on-Klip, nestled between clean fences and manicured gardens. I'd heard of it for years, always in good terms, a promise of opportunity, a dream for gifted girls from disadvantaged backgrounds. The kind of place reporters cover with hopeful music in the background and slow-motion shots of laughter in classrooms. I'd never stepped foot inside until that morning. I arrived just before 8 a.m. with my kit, tablet, checklist, clipboard, barcode scanner, backup notepad. The audit coordinator met me at the front gate. Her name was Clara, I think. She wore one of those plain NGO lanyards that didn't say which agency she was with. That wasn't unusual. Sometimes they rotate auditors from umbrella groups from neutrality. What was strange was how tightly she gripped the clipboard, like someone was going to yank it away. "Just routine," she said. "Welfare and facilities review. We're not here to cause any trouble." She kept her eyes on the entrance as she spoke. "Stay within your assigned zones. Don't go off roster. If you see something irregular, document it, but don't confront staff." That last bit stuck with me. When we entered the main building, I noticed it was too quiet. Not empty, you could hear distant murmurs, doors clicking shut, shoes tapping tiled floors, but the kind of quiet that happens when people know something's wrong and don't say it. The receptionist didn't smile when she handed us guest badges. Her mouth twitched a little, like it wanted to form a shape and gave up. I was assigned to check dormitory inventory. Bedding, desk allocation, sanitation amenities, light fixtures, standard stuff. I followed a junior staff member down a curved hallway painted soft yellow. There were little posters on the walls, all positive affirmations in neat fonts. "Be the girl who decides to go for it. Confidence is silent. You are seen." The dormitory was shaped like a U, 2 floors with an open courtyard in the middle. The air smelled clean but flat, like it had been scrubbed recently but not aired out. I started on the lower floor. Each room had 4 beds, 4 desks, 4 trunks, and identical patterned blankets folded at the foot of each bed. The girls were already in class, so I moved quietly, scanning tags and ticking boxes. It wasn't until room 114 that I noticed something wrong. The first 3 beds were tagged as expected. I scanned them without issue, but the 4th bed, in the back left corner, next to the window, had no tag. The mattress looked slightly different too. Less used, almost too clean, like it hadn't been touched in weeks. No trunk beneath it, no shoes at the foot of it, just the blanket, still folded. I flagged it on my form and asked the staffer, a slim woman named Lungi, what the story was. "Maintenance," she said quickly, not meeting my eye. "That bed's being replaced." "Okay," I said. "Just one?" She hesitated. "In this room, yes." I moved on. I found the second anomaly 4 doors later, in room 120. Same pattern. 1 bed without a tag, this time on the opposite side. And again, no trunk. No personal items. No sign that anyone had ever used it. I pointed it out. Lungi smiled, or tried to. "Some girls transfer mid-term," she said. "Sometimes we leave the bed ready for newcomers." "But the sheets are tucked like brand new," I said. She didn't answer, just moved on. I noted both anomalies, took a couple of quiet photos on my tablet, and kept going. I didn't want to stir anything yet, but my nerves were starting to flicker. Upstairs, things got stranger. We reached a locked door that I didn't have on my dormitory map. No room number, just a brushed metal placard. Reflection recovery. "What's this?" I asked. Lungi shifted. "Therapeutic space for high emotion cases. Girls with stress episodes. We don't include it in general audits." "That's not what the protocol says," I replied, holding up the checklist. "All student use areas must be logged." She didn't unlock the door. "We don't have any girls in there right now," she said. "It's empty." "Then let me log it as empty. I'll need to ask someone." "Go ahead." She disappeared around a corner. I waited. The hallway was still. One of the overhead lights buzzed faintly. I pressed my ear gently to the door. Nothing, but after a few seconds, I felt a hum, not a sound, a vibration, like when you stand near industrial servers, the deep, low-frequency pulse that doesn't register as sound but makes your teeth feel weird. I stepped back quickly. Lungi returned a few minutes later with another woman, older, more formal, hair pulled back tight. She wore no name tag. "I'm afraid that room is under inspection," she said. "It's sealed for now. You can log it as access restricted by medical authority." She nodded once. I wanted to push, but her posture said that would go nowhere. I logged it and moved on. By the end of the afternoon, I'd completed 47 rooms. The numbers mostly checked out, but 2 missing bed tags, 2 unlogged trunks, 1 restricted room, and the air felt thicker the longer I stayed, like there was something in the walls, watching, but waiting. A pressure you couldn't name. At 5:15 p.m., I returned to the ground floor supply room to do a quick spot check of toiletries and linen inventory. It was unlocked. The room smelled faintly of bleach and something sweeter, almost synthetic, like plastic toys warmed by sun. Most of the shelves were in order. Labeled bins for sanitary pads, toothbrushes, extra sheets. I scanned through them, checking counts. Everything looked normal, until I reached the back cabinet. A low metal drawer wedged slightly open. Inside were a few unused labels, a broken stapler, and a stack of folded sheets. Nothing alarming, but something was tucked between the second and third sheet. A small scrap of paper, folded 3 times. Not typed, handwritten. I unfolded it slowly. The handwriting was jagged, like a child's, but with sharp loops. It read, 17 minus the bright 1. That was it. No name, no date, no signature. I stared at it for a while. My chest got tight. I didn't know why it scared me so much. It was just a sentence, but the way it was written, like it was meant to be hidden but found, stuck to the inside of my ribs. B minus the bright 1. But there weren't 17 dorm rooms, there weren't 17 staff. 17 what? I left the note where I found it. I logged the rest of the supplies slowly, like I was trying to stall something I didn't want to meet outside that door. When I signed out at the front desk, the receptionist asked me to return tomorrow to review dining logistics. Her voice was calm, but her eyes weren't. I nodded and left. On the way out, I passed a row of shoes neatly placed beside the reception hallway. Clean, orderly, 17 pairs. I only counted 16 shadows that day. Chapter 2, The Girls Don't Blink. I didn't sleep well after the first day. I kept thinking about that note, 17 minus the bright 1. I couldn't make sense of it, but the words kept turning over in my head like a loose screw in a washing machine. I didn't tell anyone. What was I supposed to say? That a folded slip of paper in a linen drawer made my stomach knot up? I told myself it was nothing. Probably an old classroom note, some inside joke I wasn't meant to understand. Still, I left early the next morning, got to the academy by 7:30. The sky was flat gray and the air had that dry taste, like rain was trying but wouldn't come. A different receptionist was on duty, younger, polite, but distant. She handed me a badge and didn't speak unless I asked a direct question. I asked if I could sit in on the morning wellness session, part of the social development curriculum. It was technically outside my logistics assignment, but I told them I was checking on the supply distribution for student wellness kits, which wasn't a total lie. The room was a dome-shaped common area with floor cushions arranged in a spiral, walls painted in calming pastel tones. There was a soft instrumental track playing from unseen speakers, something with chimes and flowing water. 20 or so girls were already seated by the time I entered, all dressed in identical pale blue blouses and gray skirts. Some smiled when they saw me. Most didn't. A counselor named Mrs. Mabena led the session. She wore a scarf around her head and a soft expression that didn't quite reach her eyes. She gestured for me to sit along the wall. I did, notebook in hand. They began with what she called a group mantra. The girls all closed their eyes, every one of them, and began speaking in sync. We stay when we are seen, we leave when we are chosen. They said it 3 times, perfectly timed, no stumbles, no hesitations. Like muscle memory, I wrote it down, pretending I wasn't unsettled. The counselor moved on to a breathing exercise, but I couldn't stop watching their eyes. When they opened them again, they didn't blink. I know that sounds dramatic, but I mean it. At least a few of them just stared, unbroken. One girl, sitting closest to the window, didn't even breathe through her mouth, just shallow nose breaths, lips pressed tight, gaze locked on something just beyond the center of the room. Another, thin, hunched, with short braids, kept glancing at the corner of the ceiling, like she was tracking something only she could see. When I glanced over at the mirrored wall fixture, I noticed a girl had subtly angled her cushion away from it. Not fully turned, just enough so that the reflection was out of sight. The session continued. They discussed goals and gratitude and confidence, but something felt off, like everyone was reading from a playbook they didn't believe in anymore. The counselor asked what made them feel strong, and one girl said softly, "When my name is remembered." Another said, "When the lights are off." No one corrected them. Mrs. Mabena just nodded. I stayed for the full hour. As they stood to leave, the girl closest to me dropped something beside my foot, a small paper card. I bent to pick it up. It was blank. When I looked back up, she was already across the room. I tried to follow her out, but one of the staff blocked the hallway, told me I was scheduled to observe dining next. Breakfast was uneventful, or at least it should have been. Clean rows, stainless steel trays, efficient lines. But I noticed some of the girls were taking their food without looking at it. They didn't hesitate or choose. They just picked up whatever was handed to them and walked off. Some of the portions seemed off, too. A few trays had smaller servings, but none of the girls complained. I tried to strike up small talk with one girl while she waited. She was maybe 15, tall, neatly groomed, eyes sharp. "Excited for classes today?" I asked. She looked at me, calm as still water, and said, "If they ask about the chalk, tell them we don't use it anymore." I blinked. "Sorry." She turned away before I could follow up. Later that afternoon, I returned to the main admin wing to review linen logs, but the head of maintenance was late. I waited outside the office, sitting on a wooden bench beneath the school's framed vision statement. That's when one of the honor students approached me. She was unmistakable, The type of girl schools love to highlight in brochures. Polished, articulate, blazer pinned with a gold emblem that read Guiding Star. She greeted me politely, asked if I was the inventory woman. I nodded. She sat next to me and pulled something from her sleeve, a cream-colored envelope sealed with a wax stamp shaped like a spiral. She handed it to me. "Not supposed to keep this?" she said, barely above a whisper. "If they call roll again, don't answer." I stared at her. "What is this?" She smiled tightly, but her hands were trembling. "Just remember, the mirror doesn't show you. It shows who they trained you to be." Before I could respond, she stood and walked off briskly, turning down a hallway marked Studio Wing. I opened the envelope later, when I was alone in the supply cabinet room. Inside was a single photo, faded, black and white, but recent. 17 girls, all in uniform, standing in a circle around something just out of frame. You could only see the edges of it, reflective, curved. A mirror, maybe? Or a polished surface? One girl's face was blurred, not like camera motion blur, more like it had been smeared deliberately. There were no names on the back, just a phrase. "She's not in the system because she was never meant to leave." That night, I stayed at the guest housing nearby. Most of the audit team had already left, or so I was told. My room had a small desk, a hard mattress, and a fan that clicked every few seconds like a heartbeat. I tried to sleep, but my head was too full. I kept replaying the photo, the envelope, that strange chant. "We stay when we are seen." Around 2:40 a.m. I heard it. Shoes. Not running, not pacing, just a slow, dragging step. Soft soles on linoleum. A shuffle, pause, shuffle rhythm that got closer, then stopped outside my door. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. There was no knock, no voice, just silence, then the slow scrape of shoe leather turning. And then, nothing. I got up 15 minutes later, heart thudding, and opened the door. No one was there. The hallway light flickered once and stayed on. The air smelled faintly like antiseptic and something else, a little like melted plastic. I checked the security log the next morning. It showed no personnel rounds past midnight, no entries, no activity at all. But my door handle felt warm when I woke up. Chapter 3. She watches through the boards. I'd seen enough strange things in my work to know when something's been wallpapered over. It's not always a lie, not outright, more like something tucked just out of view, a folded page in the back of the file, a checklist that ends a line too early. That's what the Oprah Academy had started to feel like by the third day. The surface was smooth, polished, but too smooth. The kind you get when someone sands things down to hide the grain. No one mentioned the envelope. No one said anything about the honor student who handed it to me. When I asked casually at the front office, the receptionist said, "We don't identify girls by merit pins anymore." Then she excused herself and didn't come back. That morning, my assigned task was to verify the dorm utility closets and cross-resection linen supply against water usage. In other words, a way to keep me away from the girls. But I'd already marked something wrong on my personal map the night before. A section of the dormitory complex, toward the west wing, that didn't match the electrical schematics I'd been given on day one. The map said it was a storage zone for old maintenance equipment, but the building's load profile showed minimal electricity usage, too low for a space that large. I waited until after lunch, when most of the girls were in class and the hallways had emptied out. The west wing was quiet, colder than the rest of the building. No signs on the walls, just blank plaster and worn floorboards, the kind that had once been waxed but now looked dulled by age. I passed 2 locked doors and reached what looked like a linen cabinet recessed into the wall, but the handle didn't match the others. It was older, brass, tarnished. and the hinges had been painted over, not well either. Sloppy brush marks, like someone didn't expect it to be seen up close. I tried the handle, box of course, but as I turned to leave, I felt a breeze. Not much, just a flicker of cold air on the back of my arm. I crouched and looked at the baseboard below the cabinet. There was a gap, not a broken panel, a seam. Dust had gathered along the edge, but a faint trail, almost like scuff marks, ran along the floor just in front of it, like something had been opened, and not long ago. I tapped along the edge. One spot gave way slightly. I pressed harder. A soft click. The panel popped out an inch. Behind it was a narrow entry, not even a full doorway, just enough for someone to crawl through. The air smelled dry. Old wood and something faintly metallic, like coins left in a damp pocket. I hesitated. This wasn't part of the audit. It wasn't even marked on the restricted maps, but I went in anyway. The crawl space angled down, like a slope beneath the dormitory floor. I had to crouch low, one hand pressed against the wall for balance. My boots scraped gently on the uneven wood. The light from the panel faded fast, swallowed by shadows. I used my tablet's flashlight to guide the way. After a few meters, the tunnel opened slightly. I could stand, hunched. The walls were bare wood and concrete, cobwebbed in the corners. But the strangest thing was how quiet it was. Not the quiet of an empty place, the quiet of something that knew you were there, waiting. I turned a corner and stopped. Stacked against the far wall were uniforms, neatly folded, 17 of them, different sizes, but all the same pale blue blouse and gray skirt, each one tied with a silk ribbon. Yellow, not part of the current school uniform. Beside the stack were notebooks, thin, worn, some with frayed covers. I picked one up and flipped it open. The first few pages were clean, neat cursive, class notes, journal entries, affirmations, normal things. But halfway through, the handwriting changed. It grew slanted, erratic, the lines cramped together. 17, 17, 17, only one out, not replaced. The next line, if she comes back, the mirror resets. My chest tightened. I put the notebook down and picked up another. Same pattern, clean start, then chaos. One entry just said, she hums now, through the wall. Further in, I found a room. Not a real room, just a wider section of the crawl space, with an old-school chair bolted into the floor. In front of it, nailed to the wall, was a chalkboard. But it wasn't black. It had been painted over dozens of times. The surface was rough, scarred, with scratches layered like tree rings. Words had been etched directly into the board, over and over. Reflection, compliant. Reflection, compliant. Some lines were carved deep, others barely scratched. But they filled the whole board, rows upon rows, like someone had written it endlessly, not for punishment, not even for memory, for permission. The air felt heavier here. My tablet flickered once, then stabilized. I took a photo. It came out blurry despite the lens being clean. At the far end of the crawl space, a final corner curved into darkness. I followed it. The path ended at a sealed section. A mirror, or something close to one, had been mounted behind glass. Thick glass, smudged with dust and age. Chicken wire had been stapled across it in a grid pattern, as if it had been covered hastily not to protect it, but to trap it. My flashlight beam hit the surface and I flinched. It didn't reflect me, at least not fully. My shape was there, but hollow. No face, just a foggy outline, like breath on a window pane. On the wall beside it, written in the same shaky hand as the notebooks. Don't forget your face. My throat went dry. I tried to breathe evenly, but the air tasted wrong. stale, thick, like it hadn't moved in years. I took a step back. My foot hit something soft. A cushion. Someone had been sitting there. I turned, ready to leave. And that's when the alarm went off. It wasn't loud, just a shrill tone, like a smoke detector in another room. But it was enough. I scrambled back through the crawl space, heart thudding, flashlight bouncing off the narrow walls. The air seemed to press against me, like it didn't want to let me go. I burst out through the hidden panel, slamming it shut behind me. Security was already in the hallway. 2 men, one in a navy blazer and the other in plain clothes, approached fast. I raised my hands instinctively, stammering something about checking a utility line. "You're not authorized to be in this section," one said. "You need to return to the guest area immediately." I was verifying structural. No. Now, they didn't grab me, but they didn't need to. Their tone said enough. Back at the front office, Clara was waiting for me. Her clipboard was gone. She looked tired, like she hadn't slept either. "I need you to pause your audit," she said, voice low. "Administrative restructuring. They'll call when you're needed again." The maze said it was routine. It was. What the hell is reflection compliant? She blinked slowly, then turned away. As I left the building, I noticed the West Wing's hallway lights were off, just the faintest glow from an exit sign at the end, and in one of the darkened windows, I could have sworn I saw a face. Not moving, just watching. Through the boards. Chapter 4. The audit team never returned. I left the academy grounds before sunrise. No one stopped me, but I could feel it. Something trailing behind me, the way heavy air clings after a storm. I didn't speak to anyone. I didn't even go back to the guest housing. I drove straight to our regional NGO office in Johannesburg, windows down, just to remind myself the world outside still existed. Trees passed, billboards, a school bus, but none of it registered. Parked in the gravel lot behind the office and just sat there for a while, hands gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned pale. The building was already humming inside, phones ringing, printers buzzing. It should have felt like normal. It didn't. I walked in and asked for my coordinator. The intern at the front desk looked confused for a second before giving me a tight smile and saying she'd check. That was my first warning. I was escorted to a different office, not the usual logistics floor. A smaller room off to the side, the kind we use for onboarding or sensitive personnel transitions. A man I didn't recognize greeted me. He wore a badge clipped to his shirt pocket, but it only said Compliance Liaison. His smile was dry, too prepared. He asked me how my health was. I told him I needed to file my audit results, and more importantly, I needed to speak to Clara and the others who'd been part of the review rotation. He nodded thoughtfully, then said, "I believe your audit cohort has been reassigned for regional relief operations, drought response in the Free State." No one told me. "There's been some restructuring. Your clearance remains intact, but we ask that you refrain from revisiting the Henley on-clip documentation for the time being." I stared at him. "I need to file my notes. There are discrepancies in inventory and the dormitory crawl space." "Thank you," he cut in gently. "But we won't be pursuing that angle. Not for now." I left the room in silence, not angry, not afraid, just numb. I went back to my desk, where my login still worked, and tried to pull up the audit schedule. Everyone's names had been replaced with alphanumerics. Field Agent 7, Support C, Ops Liaison 2. No surnames, no linked contact numbers, just blank icons. I tried the internal phone. Extension after extension rang out. Then I checked the main directory. Clara wasn't in it, neither were the others I'd shared orientation with. They were gone. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I did something I shouldn't have. I pulled up the school's student wellness database, not the public one, the internal NGO version. Every audit file was supposed to be mirrored here, with student records anonymized but still traceable by ID. I keyed in the code from one of the rooms I'd audited, the one with the missing bed tag. Nothing. I tried a second, then a third. Finally, I entered a wildcard search, filtering by region, year, and dorm assignment. The screen flashed red. Request denied. Parent, guardian, protocol activated. The words pulsed once, then the system locked. Logged out, then in again. Same result. It was like the data had been vacuumed out behind me. I left work early that day. I needed air. I needed silence that wasn't haunted. I took the long road back to my flat, passing familiar intersections that now felt like scenery in someone else's life. There was a package waiting at my door. No return address, just my name, handwritten in thick black ink on a plain cardboard box, about the size of a shoebox. The handwriting was tight, almost aggressive, letters too close together. I brought it inside, locked the door, and set it on the kitchen counter. For a long while, I just stared at it. When I finally opened it, my breath caught. Inside were a pair of shoes. Not new, but clean. School shoes. The kind issued to students. Soft black leather, single strap, slightly worn soles. And they were exactly my size. I know that sounds like a trick of memory, but I swear, down to the width, the arch. I tried one on, and it fit better than my own. Nestled between the shoes was a small USB drive, cream-colored, no brand logo, just a handwritten label on one side. Playback to rejected. I didn't plug it in. I don't know why. Maybe I did. Maybe I knew exactly why. I placed the shoes back in the box and slid it under my kitchen sink. I turned on the TV, then turned it off again. I sat in the dark. At 2:11 a.m., the power cut out. No storm, no scheduled outage, just a sharp flick. Lights gone, appliances silent, the buzz of electricity replaced by a kind of breathing silence, the kind that fills in too fast, like the dark had been waiting its turn. I stayed still in bed, eyes open. Then I heard it. Chime. Soft, far away, but real. It was like a school bell, but thinner. Too old. It didn't echo like a real bell would. It landed flat, like it rang inward. Then silence. I sat up. My hallway was black, but my phone screen was still on, no signal. Just a frozen screen with the calendar app open, the date highlighted in red. It wasn't the right date. It was from 2 years ago. The same date stamped on the photo in the envelope the girl had given me. I reset the phone, it went black and never turned back on. By morning, the power returned. Everything was where it should be, except the box. Gone. No signs of forced entry, no scuff marks, no trace. On my bathroom mirror, faint and curling at the edges, was something drawn with a fingertip. A spiral. Not perfect, but deliberate. I wiped it away, but even now sometimes, when the mirror fogs up, it comes back. I haven't opened the USB, but I haven't thrown it away either. It sits now in a drawer I never touch. Sometimes I hear the faint sound of shoes in the hallway outside my flat, even when no one's there. And sometimes, when I try to remember the names of the other auditors, the ones I trained with, ate with, shared notes with, I can't. Their faces blur in my mind like static, and something inside me whispers. 17, only one out, not replaced. 17 chairs. Didn't go back to the academy. Not officially anyway. The investigation had gone cold, if you could call it an investigation at all. My agency contacts stopped returning emails. The student file system never came back online. And whenever I asked about the audit team, I got the same flat answer. We're reviewing assignments across departments. No changes available for disclosure. It wasn't stonewalling, it was something deeper, like they weren't just denying me answers, they were denying that the questions ever existed. But then I got her name. A manila envelope appeared in my mailbox, no return label. Inside, a single page printed with a list of initials and an address written at the bottom. No message, no context. I recognized one set of initials, MDL, and remembered them from a staffing sheet I wasn't supposed to keep back when the audit rotation was first put together. MDL was listed as dormitory liaison. Phase. The address was in Valwater, a tiny rural town up north, mostly farmland and conservation areas. I took a bus, then a rented van with a failing transmission that rattled with every hill. The house was a stone building wrapped in dust and faded corrugated roofing. Tin cans strung on fishing line hung from the fence, not decoration, deterrent. I parked at the edge of the road, didn't walk in right away. The air felt pressed down, like the whole place had been crouching for years. When I finally knocked, no one answered. I waited, knocked again. Just as I turned to leave, the door creaked open an inch. A woman stood behind it, maybe late 50s, barefoot, eyes red-rimmed. She didn't say hello. "You were followed," she said flatly. "I don't think so. The bait don't need to be seen to follow." She opened the door wider. Her name was Miss Daniela Tabo, MD, LA. She didn't shake hands. She led me into a small kitchen cluttered with paper stacks and unwashed mugs. Every mirror in the house was covered with cloth, with cardboard, with thick layers of tape. She motioned for me to sit, then stared at me for a long time before speaking. I only stayed 2 years, back when the school was still forming, before the first press conference, before the ribbon cutting and camera tours. I asked her why she left. I didn't leave. I was unassigned, that's the word they used, after I told them the chairs didn't make sense. I paused, confused. The chairs? She stood up and reached behind a bookshelf, pulled out a dusty folder, yellowing at the edges. "There were always 17, she said. 17 chairs in the group room, even before we had 17 girls. Even before we had 12, they told me it was to prepare for capacity. But every week, those chairs stayed filled, even if the girls..." I leaned in. "What do you mean, didn't?" She didn't answer, just opened the folder. Inside were old facility layouts, student rosters with numbers that didn't match what I'd seen, photos of empty dorm rooms tagged with dates and initials. Then a journal. The cover was torn, pages missing, but in the center she flipped to one that had been folded in half and pressed flat. In sharp, shaky pencil, the words, "She stands behind the light." I swallowed hard. Who is she? She met my eyes for the first time. The mirror girl. That's what they called her. The one who wouldn't go through, wouldn't comply, wouldn't mirror. She explained slowly, her voice lowering with each word, like the air itself was listening. "They tell people the school is selective, that girls apply, interview, audition. But that's not the truth. The truth is, the school applies to them, a certain profile, a certain pattern. They're found, chosen. Families think it's opportunity, it's actually exchange." I asked, "Exchange for what?" She looked away. "Presence. Placement. Some girls go in, and something comes out with them." That's what the reflection program was. Not therapy, not wellness. A sorting process. A copy, a displacement. I don't know what's on the other side. I only know that once it chooses you, you stop blinking. My stomach turned cold. Calm girl each cycle, she said. Vanished. Quietly. No announcement. Their belongings cleaned before anyone noticed. And another arrived the next day, like nothing happened. But not all the new ones were new. Some were altered. She stood and paced the kitchen. The floor creaked. But the system failed when she came. The bright one. That's what the others called her. She didn't mirror, wouldn't. The chalkboard lessons didn't work. The mantras didn't stick. She looked into the glass, and it looked away. What happened to her? Ms. Lethabo rubbed her hands, slowly, like she was trying to clean something invisible from her fingers. They tried to send her out. Failed attempt. Rejected playback, they said. But she wouldn't vanish. She stayed in the records. She echoed. That's when the other girls began to change. She took a breath. Her voice dropped lower. Feeling they started whispering her name when they slept. Started writing spirals into their books. One girl was found pressing her face to the window at night, murmuring 17 minus the bright one. I leaned forward. Have you seen her since? That girl? Mrs. Lethabo didn't answer right away. Then she walked to the fridge and opened the freezer. Inside, wrapped in cloth and stored in an old tin box, was a photograph. 17 chairs, arranged in a circle, 16 girls sitting. And in the final chair, empty. Only it wasn't quite empty. The space shimmered like a shadow taken mid-mathma. I couldn't look away. My eyes stung, but I kept staring. She's still waiting, Ms. Lethabo said behind me. And she doesn't stand in front of the mirror anymore. She stands behind the light. My mouth went dry. I forced a breath. Why are you telling me this now? Because the audit wasn't about logistics, she said. It was about tallying. Tallying what? Her eyes dropped to my shoes. To see if you were a match. I didn't stay much longer. She said one more thing as I opened her front door. If you hear the chime again, don't follow it, and whatever happens, don't sit down. That night, back in my flat, I opened a drawer where I'd hidden the U.S. It was warm, and in the reflection of the window just past my shoulder I thought I saw a chair. 17th. Still empty. Still waiting. Chapter 6. The raid wasn't supposed to happen. They told me it wasn't an official raid. It was a facility review prompted by external footage concerns, but no one used the word leak, even though that's exactly what it was. A 37-second video clip, uploaded anonymously to an offshore archive, stripped of metadata but unmistakably real. It showed a dim, tiled corridor, recognizable as part of the West Wing I'd crawled through weeks ago. No timestamp, no sound. Just the slow, jerky movement of the camera as it panned down a dark hall, and then a flash of white. The hem of a school uniform. A girl stepping just out of frame. And then, for 3 seconds, the shot widened to reveal the mirror. The same one I saw behind the chicken wire. Only this time it wasn't covered. And it didn't reflect the person holding the camera. Just the hallway. Empty. The file was forwarded to several human rights observers, then to an intergovernmental watchdog committee. That's when someone finally called me back, said I'd be brought in as a logistics observer to confirm structural consistency during a site reassessment. But I knew what this was. They were going in because they had no choice. There were 7 of us in the convoy, 3 government officials from Pretoria, 1 psychologist, 1 representative from the International Education Board, a documentation officer, and me. They gave us clearance for 12 hours. No students were visible when we arrived, no classes in session. The campus was on scheduled break, according to the front desk, though none of us were told in advance. As we moved through the halls, I noticed the dormitory walls had been repainted. Not fresh, just a new color, pale beige, to soften the stark yellow. The words from the posters I remembered were gone. Nothing motivational. Just bare surfaces, wiped clean. We moved quickly. The government official in charge, a tight-jawed woman named Mahobe, ordered all staff to vacate the immediate inspection zones. When no one argued, that's when I knew they were expecting us. The tech officer began checking server closets. Most of the surveillance drives had already been wiped. He opened one file directory and found nothing but a looping folder labeled Cycle 5 Ready. The psychologist pulled aside 2 younger staff members for interview. One claimed she had only been working at the academy for 6 weeks. The other insisted she wasn't allowed to speak about rotational assignments. Neither made eye contact. When Mahobe demanded master keys, the administrator hesitated for a beat too long before handing them over. The moment we reached the West Wing, I knew something was wrong. The crawlspace panel was still there, but when we pried it open, the path was different. Shorter. The tunnel had been collapsed, not fully destroyed, just filled in halfway with broken furniture and sheets of drywall, like someone tried to erase it but didn't have time. I led them as far in as I could. The air smelled the same, old and damp, with that faint plastic sting, but the boards had been sanded smooth. The uniforms were gone, the chair was gone, and at the far end where the mirror had once been, only a blank wall now. But when I pressed my hand to it, the concrete was warm. Not electrically, not artificially heated, just warm. Like something had been standing behind it, close. We didn't stay long. Mahobe marked the wall with a yellow chalk X and ordered a full scan. It was the basement that changed everything. We found a panel behind the laundry chute, cleverly set into the wall, matched with the tile, almost invisible. The hinges had been painted to hide the seam, but once we wedged it loose, it opened onto a narrow staircase. No lights, just rough steps leading down. We descended, one by one. The sub-basement wasn't on any blueprint. The ceiling lowered as we moved, and the walls shifted from smooth plaster to unfinished stone, like it had been dug by hand, not built. At the bottom we found a corridor of doors, thin metal frames, no locks from the inside. Every one of them had a number, 1 through 17. Some doors were open, some had been closed for a long time. Hinges stiff, the smell stale and bitter. Inside each room, a mattress, a chair, a blank mirror. And girls. 17 of them. All alive. They were thin, quiet. Most didn't look up when we entered. A few stared blankly at the floor. Some blinked slowly, as if waking from something deep and distant. One girl, the smallest, sat cross-legged, whispering to herself in a slow rhythm. She didn't stop, even as the psychologist knelt beside her. When we asked their names, only one answered. She was maybe 15, sharp cheekbones, one eye slightly red. She looked straight at me when I asked again. She said softly, "Where's the bright one?" The room went still. I tried to ask what she meant, but she closed her mouth tight, like something inside her had clamped shut. The documentation officer began filming, but his camera glitched every 3rd second. Corrupted frames, whiteouts. The psychologist kept saying, "This wasn't in any of the reports. This wasn't disclosed." Mahobe said nothing. We moved the girls upstairs, gently, slowly. None resisted. But as we passed through the main hall, one of them looked up at the stained glass window above the stairwell and flinched, covering her eyes. We got 'em out. 17 total. No names, no matching records. And none of them could tell us how long they'd been there. Hours later, back at the field post, we ran diagnostics on the footage again. One camera had managed to capture the descent into the sub-basement cleanly. As we reviewed the frame-by-frame playback, someone noticed a detail we hadn't seen before. In one of the corridor mirrors, the ones we didn't stop to inspect, a faint shape lingered in the reflection. Not one of us. Someone standing just beyond the light. Not facing the mirror, facing away as if watching the hallway behind them. When we traced the original whistleblower footage, expecting it to be linked to the school servers, we were hit with something unexpected. The footage had been uploaded from a signal node, traced back to a decommissioned coastal tower. We saw a lighthouse, 40 miles away, unmanned, powered down years ago, used now only as a storm beacon when tides get high. But the upload came from there. Same timestamp, same coordinates. And when they pulled the security feed from the nearby water station, one frame showed a shadow at the top window of the lighthouse. Not moving, just watching. The girls have been taken to a secure care facility. No press release has been issued, no headlines, just silence. But I can't sleep, because sometimes, when I close my eyes, I see the number 17 carved into the inside of my eyelids. And when I wake up, I swear the corner of my mirror is smudged, like someone touched it from the other side. She wasn't in the basement. The bright one. She's still out there. And she remembers. Chapter 7. Inventory complete. These were told not to speak. No one said it outright, of course, but every meeting after the raid came with fewer documents, more off-the-record briefings, more glances across the room before a word was said. The 17 girls were moved quietly. No announcement, no joint task force review. Each one placed in a separate care program, spread out like chess pieces across provinces. Humanitarian flights disguised as routine medical transfers. I wasn't allowed to see their faces again. The day after the sub-basement was sealed, I was asked to step into a temporary operations tent near the outer gate. Inside was a white plastic table, a fan turning too fast, and a man from the International Health Delegation. I didn't catch his name. He had the kind of face that evaporates from memory the moment you look away. He slid a paper toward me, one page, already filled out. Post-engagement silence agreement, he said. Routine for incidents of this sensitivity. I didn't respond. Just read it once, slowly. The phrasing was cold, deliberately generic. It referenced subject-based irregularity, compartmentalized population engagement, and narrative stabilizations. Not one word about children, or the mirror, or what we'd seen. The man folded his hands. We're going to lose control of this narrative, he said softly. You understand? I looked him dead in the eye and said nothing. He tilted his head, just a little, and smiled like someone rehearsing empathy. You're tired, and that's fair. But you've done your part. Now it's time for the story to settle. I slid the paper back and stood up. No, I said. He didn't argue, just nodded, folded the page and tucked it back into his folder like he already knew. Within 48 hours, my access credentials were disabled. I couldn't log into the NGO's network. My ID badge flagged red when I tried to enter the Johannesburg office. No one returned my calls. No one answered my emails. 3 days later, I tried to use my bank card. Declined. I checked the app. My account was marked as under verification. A long list of pending compliance reviews appeared on the dashboard. I contacted support. They said the review was automatic and not subject to appeal. I still had cash. Not much. Enough to get back to my flat and sit with the silence. But when I opened the door, I knew I wasn't alone. Nothing had been moved, not in the obvious way. The furniture was still where I left it, the curtains undisturbed. But the light was wrong. Just a little too soft, like it was passing through another filter, and the air smelled watched, the way a room does when someone's just stepped out and you don't know which door they used. My wall mirror was fogged over. No steam, no broken heater, no logical reason. Just miss, clinging to the glass like breath, and written in the middle, in the uncertain looping scrawl of a child. You saw us, now stay seen. I didn't move for a long time. My mouth was dry, My fingers twitched. Eventually, I wiped the glass, but the fog didn't come off right away. It resisted, like whatever marked it had sunk deeper, past the surface, into the memory of the mirror itself. I went to the sink and splashed water on my face. And that's when I heard it. Footsteps. Slow, measured, just outside my front door. No knock, no shuffle, no voice. Then the sound that made my chest freeze. Chime. Just once. The same tone I heard that night when the power cut out. The same pitch from the chalkboard room. I grabbed the doorknob but didn't open it. The footsteps moved on. But I knew better now. This wasn't about truth anymore, or logistics, or abandoned girls. This was about keeping the story incomplete. About managing the myth and filing it away before it could bloom into memory. But I saw them. I remember them. 17 chairs. One bright one missing. Now apparently I'm part of the count. Chapter 8. The 17th Girl. Final journal entry. Unsent draft, undated. Where I am exactly. Somewhere coastal, I think. The walls are thin, and I can hear gulls in the morning, but I haven't dared open the windows. The curtains stay closed. I move between 3 rooms, lights dimmed, mirrors covered with torn bedsheets I pinned up my first night here. They said I was free to go, that I could leave the investigation, find peace, start a new story, one official told me over a scrambled line I never dialed. But no one ever offered an explanation. Just the option to forget. A door left open behind me, an invitation not to ask. But I can't forget. And now I can't sleep without seeing 17 chairs. 2 nights ago I finally retrieved the US Playback 2, rejected. I had hidden it inside a pack of dried lentils, sealed in a double freezer bag, stuffed inside the lining of my suitcase. I don't know why I kept it, or why I was scared to touch it. Maybe part of me hoped it would erase itself, but it didn't. I plugged it into the last functional laptop I have, a machine with no Wi-Fi, no Bluetooth, no camera. I booted it in safe mode and held my breath. There was one file. No title, no metadata, just a blank black icon. I clicked. The footage stuttered as it loaded. Grainy, unsteady, like someone filmed it with trembling hands on an old surveillance camera. The audio was muted, replaced with a low hum, steady, pulsing, like breath. The frame showed a narrow hallway, pale yellow walls, familiar. The dormitory wing. And then I appeared. But younger. Not by much. Just enough to be wrong. A slightly different posture. Hair longer than I remember. The shape of my shoulders unfamiliar. And yet, I knew it was me. I watched as this version of myself walked down the hallway and opened the panel to the crawl space. Crawled inside. Vanished into the dark. The camera angle never moved, but the footage flickered, jumped forward. Now I was inside the room with the mirror. Only I wasn't facing it. I was facing the chalkboard. The chair was behind me. He turned, and the frame froze. Just for a moment. Enough to catch my reflection. No face. Not blurred, not blocked, just nothing. A hollow outline where my features should have been. Eyes erased, mouth gone. A smooth absence where memory should be. Then the file cut out. No error message, no end screen, just static. I sat in the dark for hours after that, the hum from the video still playing in my ears, even though I'd closed the file. I tried to open the USB again the next morning. It was empty. The folder had vanished, the icon erased. All that remained was a new image in my downloads. No label, no date. The photo, 17 girls. lined up in front of the academy's central window. The stained glass one, the one no one ever mentioned. Most of them stared ahead, blank expressions, but one girl at the end of the row was turned slightly, looking directly at the camera. And it was me. Not just a resemblance, not just a shared shape. It was me. My eyes, my birthmark near the left temple, the scar on my wrist from falling on a broken tile when I was 11. But her clothes were too clean. Her smile was too smooth. I don't remember taking that photo. I don't remember standing there, but I know what I saw. I wasn't behind the camera. I was in the frame. I was part of the count. The audit logs I'd saved, hidden copies, backup notes I didn't even remember copying, had one final page I never noticed before, a watermark pressed deep in the bottom corner. Reflection, compliant, sealed. That stamp wasn't part of the form. It had bled into the paper itself, as if the page had agreed with something I hadn't. I don't know who the bright one was anymore. Maybe she never existed. Or maybe I was her. Maybe I refused the mirror once, and they let me go, broken. It's quieter now. No more emails, no more calls. But I hear things. Sometimes, when I turn off the lights, I hear the scrape of a chair across tile. Sometimes I smell bleach. And sometimes, in the half second before I fall asleep, I feel someone watching from behind the wall. Not cruel, not angry, just waiting. I still haven't opened the curtains. But this morning, on the inside of the window pane, drawn with a fingertip into the condensation, a single spiral, and underneath it, she's back in the count. If anyone finds this file, this entry, this record, this echo, understand, this wasn't an audit. This was an invitation. One they mailed to me years ago, maybe before I was even born. And I was always meant to return. I just didn't remember until I looked.